back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
I used to love that show after school, The Young and the Restless, yeah? It's a soap opera, and you deal with real-life soap operas, right?
All the time.
We do.
We're talking about wills and estates from McQuarrieHunterLLP. We have Alyssa Lockhart, partner, and J.C. Wingson, QC and partner as well. And, you know, I just wanted to get down to what is a will? Like, can I just write something out on a piece of paper? Is that good enough? Does it have to be lawyered up? Can I go to a notary? Can I get my neighbor to witness it? Is that, you know, where does it begin and end?
Well, it should be lawyered up.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But WESA has really made a very profound change in what is a will. And before WESA, you had to satisfy in the Wills Act. That was the governing legislation, and you had to satisfy certain requirements. It had to be in writing, it had to be signed in a certain way, etc. And you know, and usually that meant, you know, and something that is done by a lawyer or a notary. But it really was more related to the way it got signed. That's the thing that the lawyer and the notary would know about. So if you had somebody who thought they'd done a will and they signed it and they maybe had one witness, it's not a will. Plain and simple.
That was the old way.
That's the old way.
Right.
Now WESA has said, but you have to make an application to get it to be found to be a will. It says, you know, you can have anything written and it could be a will. What it has to satisfy is that it must demonstrate the testators or the will makers' final testamentary intentions. So you must be able to determine from whatever document you're putting before the court that this is the final act that this person did to dispose of their assets. So for example, I had a solicitor send me a family, you know, usually when you go to the solicitors, they had sheets called wills instruction sheet. And sometimes they'd send that to the client ahead of time so you can fill in and, you know, questions about assets and all of that. And the family brought in this will instruction sheet and said...
So that's kind of like the starting point.
It's the starting point,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
So they bring that in after the person died and say, here, this is their will. Well, no, because... that person, and I'm sure Alyssa will tell you, somebody could come in on day one and give you certain instructions, but when they come back in on, you know, day 7 to actually sign the will, they change it. So you have to be able to satisfy the court that this is the final, you know,
and so
reflection of their intentions.
So if you find something in the house, you find something on their computer, you find anything, and how would you go to court and prove that it is the final?
Well, it's all going to depend on the actual document that's brought in. So bringing it in, the first step would be bring it into the estate solicitor who's seeing about the administration.
So if it's a Word document on a computer, it's got a date stamp on it, right?
Yeah, something like that. You're going to want to know.
But anybody could have written it, right?
I was going to say, you're going to want to know that the person who died is actually the author of that document. So if you can't prove that, you're going to have a difficult time.
Sure.
So you have to be able to prove it, you know, it's from that person and it is showing their final intention as to what they want to happen to their estate.
Have you heard of any extreme cases like this, scratching it out on a tablecloth, or have you got any strange ones like that?
One of the earlier cases, I think it was a fellow who wrote a suicide note. And he said, this is, you know, I want my girlfriend to have this, that, and the other. And clearly, and then, you know, the next step, he, you know, committed suicide. I think he jumped off a bridge in that one. So clearly everybody identified it was his handwriting. You know, they knew it was from him and it was the last thing he did.
And it indicated a disposition of assets.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another key factor for us. We've had in just on my desk right now, I have two where people are potentially claiming that something other than the fully executed will in standard will form is the last will. So, and we've had others, but we had one where a client went into a notary's office and gave instructions and then did not review the draft, did not pick up the draft, did not pay for the draft, canceled 2 appointments to sign the draft, and then one of the family members suggested that this draft will created following an initial interview, but never reviewed by the client to confirm whether it met with his expectations was in fact what he was trying to convey to the notary. So that one didn't go anywhere. But then we have another one. We have a list of assets and a list of names. Now, it's undated, it's unsigned, but everyone agrees that it is in the deceased's handwriting. But that person also had a validly executed will, 2 witnesses, fully sets out the lists of assets to go in different directions, quite different than the list. We don't know whether the list was created prior to, and then the testator changed his mind. We don't know whether the list was created subsequent to the will. Perhaps the testator was thinking, if I change my will, this is what I might do, and then put it away and thought, no, I'm not going to change my will. We don't have that information yet. So we have to look into that. We have to delve into that. And, you know, there might be other ancillary documents, secondary documents where we can see, is there a diary? Is there a text message to somebody? Did he say, oh, I made a list of information for my new will today. I'm absolutely certain about it.
But who's going to write that?
It's all about the evidence.
Client.
The perfect client.
The perfect client.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So what are the procedures that you start in these sorts of things? Like, how do you even get started on this sort of stuff?
So when people come in to see us, you know, it's, and again, sometimes they think, well, you know, I want to get this will varied. Our initial consultations with them is it's not limited to, oh, is the will fair or not. We delve into the family history. We want to know what's going on because it may be that the question of undue influence comes up. So those are very different ways of attacking a will. So there are 2 distinct ones. One is to say the will is invalid for different reasons, undue influence, the person wasn't capable, etc. The other is the will is valid, but it's unfair. Mm-hmm. So we really do peel away. So someone wants to leave all of their money to the SPCA, and they've got 2 children. You would say, that's a valid will, but is it really fair? That's correct. So if they say, you know, mom was sharp right till the end, absolutely, like no question, and you know, pretty independent, you know, like nobody could tell her what to do, and that's what she did. Yes, then we shift, and the question is going to be, is the distribution under the will fair? Now, if mom left, you know, before doing her will, leaving everything to the SPCA, if she had gone and given to each child a brand new house or whatever, and then had a smallish estate that she left to the SPCA, the court's going to look at that. They look at, well, what did you get before she died? Mm-hmm. Or if mom may have had life insurance policies or RIFs and you're the designated beneficiary, that doesn't form part of her estate. So that's not included in what's going to go to the SPCA. Again, the court's going to look and say, oh, well, you got $1 million under her life insurance policy. Right. And now SPCA is getting $100,000. So, you know, we're going to respect her wish to do what she wanted with her estate. Yeah, so it's not cut and dry. You do have to look at the entire picture in order to be able to give proper advice and take the proper course. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because a lot of people would think that all of those things fall into the will, but there are exclusions, right? There are, yes. So if anything's in joint custody, it transfers over to the remaining party, right? Well, that is one area that I have a lot of litigation in that area where people put either bank accounts or investments or property in joint names. It's often tied to the undue influence because, the kid's living with mom and all of a sudden the house is in both of their names and it goes to the survivor when mom dies. So again, another presumption. We have a presumption of resulting trust. In other words, the law assumes bargains is what we call. They don't assume that you're going to give somebody something that valuable. Mm-hmm. They assume there's going to be a give and take or whatever. So the law says, if you've got something that's valuable, then we're going to presume, although it's in your name legally, it actually belongs to your mom, and now she's dead, it belongs to her estate. And you have the onus of proving that she intended to make it a gift to you. So that very often, sometimes a lot of the situations I see is where you have the house, now very valuable real estate, going into one kid's name. The estate has nothing in it. So what's the point of challenging the fairness of the distribution in the will if there's nothing in the estate? So we actually have one lawsuit where we say, hey, that property really belonged to mom.
To the estate. Mm-hmm.
So it's now the estate. So you pull it into the estate and then you have your fairness.
Right. All right. Quick break. We're going to come back talking about wills and estate law next on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.